A Taste of Yesterday. Childhood Foods from 1950s America. A nostalgic memoir in flavors, sounds, and warmth. In the quiet hours of a school day afternoon, before the sun had fully dipped behind the rooftops, I remember the sound of a skillet meeting flame. No one in the house announced it, but we knew. We could tell from the first soft clatter of the pan, the hush of butter hitting metal, then that unmistakable scent, the aroma of warmth and memory. It wasn't much. Just thin slices of white bread, pulled from a wax paper loaf, buttered on both sides by Mum's gentle hands. She never rushed the process. The skillet waited until the right heat glowed beneath it. The bread, once dropped, sizzled like it was whispering secrets to the stove. The butter soaked through, melted into every crumb, meeting the fire with a soft crackle that filled the kitchen. And when it was just golden enough, when the edges turned a crisp, delicate brown, she'd lift them gently, place them on a chipped plate, and sprinkle over a mix of granulated sugar and cinnamon. No measuring cup, no precise recipe, just a mother's rhythm. The sugar landed like snow, and the cinnamon bloomed in the heat, sending a scent into the air that I still carry in my chest every October. One bite, and it all sang crunching like dry leaves underfoot, tasting like the end of a long school day and the beginning of a quiet evening at home. We didn't call it a snack back then. It wasn't labelled. It just was. A simple thing you could make without money, without a store, without even asking. All you needed was a skillet, a quiet mother with a little patience left in her hands, and a stretch of time that belonged to no one else but you. Birthday cakes weren't tall back then. They didn't have sparklers or buttercream roses. But what we waited for, what made our eyes go wide and our feet tap the kitchen floor, was the Jell-O tray in the fridge. Red, then orange, then green, then yellow. Mum poured each layer with the precision of a jeweler, tipping the tray just so, then sliding it carefully onto the refrigerator shelf. We knew better than to slam the fridge door. Each layer had to rest and cool before the next one came. It took hours, whole afternoons. But we stood there, watching like it was the moon landing. And when the final layer shimmered under the light, trembling slightly as she lifted it from the fridge, it looked like stained glass. We each got a square, cold to the touch, the colours slicing through the glass plate like magic. It wasn't just dessert. It was time turned solid. It was patience made edible. It was a mother's devotion moulded into something you could taste, bite by trembling bite. Leftovers weren't wasted in our house. They were reborn. If there were mashed potatoes from the night before, Mum would wake a little earlier. She'd roll the soft, pale mound into balls, add some chopped scallions and a dash of flour, then flatten them just slightly between her palms. Into the skillet they went, and as they browned and bubbled, the smell of comfort returned. These were tomorrow's dish. Not quite breakfast, not quite lunch, just something warm to fill your belly before school. Crisp on the outside, fluffy inside, the way only potatoes can be when they've rested. The sound of them frying was the backdrop to the morning radio news, jazz, or a weather report floating through static. We never said it out loud, but these little patties tasted like being cared for, like the comfort of being known. And even now, if I close my eyes and imagine the scent of frying potatoes, I swear I hear the old announcer's voice and feel the chill of the kitchen floor on bare feet. The cold in those days crept in quietly, through the window cracks and beneath the door. We didn't have central heating, just thick socks, knit sweaters, and a stove that clanked when the wind howled. But what really warmed us came in a bowl. Campbell's soup. Just from a can, yes. Tomato, chicken noodle, sometimes vegetable beef. But Mum would pour it into a saucepan, let it simmer slowly, the steam rising like a lullaby. Then she'd crumble in a handful of saltine crackers, not too many, just enough to soften and melt into the broth like little clouds. The soup thickened slightly, mellowed in flavour, and became something far more tender than it was before. On flu days, or after sledding with snow-soaked mittens, that soup tasted like care. It was warmth you could hold. Each spoonful whispered, "You're home." And if you were lucky, You got to eat it on the couch, with a blanket tucked around your legs, listening to the wind outside, pretending you didn't have to go back to school tomorrow. We weren't bribed often, but every child knew the unspoken bargain. Behave all week, no bickering, no sass, and come Saturday, Mum would make banana pudding. It wasn't instant. It wasn't quick. That was the point. She'd start with vanilla pudding, cooked slowly over the stove, thick and sweet. Then she'd slice the bananas not too ripe, just soft enough, and layer them with rows of Nilla wafers inside a glass bowl. Layer after layer until the pudding swallowed the cookies and the bananas held their place like golden bookmarks in a custard novel. The final touch was a soft crown of whipped cream, fluffed and chilled. Then it sat in the fridge for what felt like forever. We'd open the door every hour, hoping it was ready. It was a test of self-control. When she finally served it, each spoon sank through pudding, banana, softened wafer. The first bite was cold, sweet, and soft all at once, a comfort layered not just in ingredients, but in memory. It was the flavour of reward, of good behaviour, of being a child still small enough to believe dessert was a form of praise. There were no cafes on every corner, no drive-thrus with kids' meals in paper bags, but there was always peanut butter in the pantry and bananas ripening on the windowsill. On warm summer afternoons, the kind that buzzed with cicadas and smelled faintly of fresh-cut grass, Mom would make the sandwich I still dream about. 2 slices of white bread, soft as a pillow. A thick layer of peanut butter, smooth and stubborn. Slices of banana pressed in a neat row. Then she'd close it all, cut it diagonally, never straight across, and hand it to me like it was treasure. It stuck to the roof of your mouth. It clung to your teeth. But we loved it. I remember sitting on the porch steps, comic book spread across my lap, reading Superman while that sandwich glued my jaws shut. The sweat dripped from my temple. The sandwich softened in my hand. But every bite was joyous and warmed, homemade, and entirely enough. Some foods are loud, not in sound, but in spirit. At Halloween or the school fair, or whenever the church hosted a bake sale, popcorn balls made their bright, sticky entrance. And sometimes, when the mood struck her, Mum would make them at home, usually when there was too much laughter and not enough quiet. She boiled corn syrup with sugar, stirred it until it hissed and bubbled, then poured the golden mixture over fresh popcorn in a giant bowl. The smell was buttery and sweet, like a party just started. Then came the fast part molding the popcorn into sticky balls before it hardened. Our hands got coated, our cheeks too, but no one cared. That was the point. We bit into them with crunches and giggles, syrup sticking to our lips, bits of popcorn flying. They weren't tidy, they weren't polite, but they were the taste of celebration, of bare feet on linoleum, of music on the record player, and not a single care in the world. When you held a popcorn ball, the world paused for a moment of sugary, messy happiness. Friday nights had a rhythm, the kind of rhythm that didn't come from a metronome, but from laughter, footsteps, and a radio humming in the corner. That was Sloppy Joe night. Mum would saute ground beef with chopped onions and garlic, letting it brown just right. Then came the tomato sauce, thick and red, stirred in and simmered until the whole house smelled like warmth. When it was ready, she'd heap spoonfuls of the saucy mixture onto soft hamburger buns, no sesame seeds, no frills. You couldn't eat one cleanly. That was part of the charm. You hunched forward, elbows on the table, sauce dripping down your wrist, and no one said a word about it. The meal was messy, but the mood was not. We shared stories from school, exaggerated playground triumphs, jokes we barely understood. Dad leaned back with a beer, smiling quietly, the radio narrating some distant ball game. Sloppy Joes weren't elegant, but they brought everyone to the same table, faces flushed with laughter. It was the meal of loud evenings, when a family of many voices became one. Before hot dogs were wrapped in foil at stadiums, before ballpark snacks had barcodes, there were pan-fried sausages in our kitchen. Mum would split the sausages lengthwise and toss them on a hot skillet. They sizzled, popped, even danced a little in the pan. She toasted the buns right on the stove, their edges catching just enough flame to crisp without burning. Then came a drizzle of yellow mustard sharp, simple, unapologetic. That was lunch on game days or after a morning of yard work. You ate standing up sometimes, mustard stinging your nose, fingers greasy, but heart full. Then, like clockwork, you'd run outside, fueled by salt and speed, to race bikes, climb trees, or challenge the world to a new game made up on the spot. The sandwich disappeared in minutes, but the memory of the sizzle and the burn of mustard lingered longer. Every time I pass a cart selling sausages, a small piece of that afternoon plays again. We didn't have ice cream shops on every block, and the freezer wasn't always stocked, but we had aluminum trays, wooden sticks, and imagination. Mum would mix sweetened condensed milk with cocoa powder and hot water. Simple. She poured the mixture into tiny moulds, sometimes old yogurt containers, and slipped in the sticks. Into the freezer they went, and then the waiting began. We checked every half hour, lifting the frosty lid of the freezer, hoping they'd solidified. We'd jiggle the trays, peer inside. It was the longest wait of childhood. But when they were finally ready, brown and cold, rough around the edges, they were better than anything store-bought. We held them like treasures, licking them as they melted faster than we could eat. The sweetness wasn't perfect, the texture was icy, but it was ours, homemade, born of patience and love. That was summer in a bite. Sticky fingers, cocoa-sweet lips, and laughter drifting under the hot July sun. The holidays didn't bring Amazon boxes or blinking decorations, but they did bring cookies, dozens of them, warm from the oven, made with love and little hands. Mum would knead the dough on the wooden countertop, flour floating in the air like powdered snow. We each got a rolling pin. Each got cookie cutter stars, trees, Santas, and bells. Our shapes were crooked, our icing always smudged. But it didn't matter. The cookies baked in the coal oven, their buttery smell winding through the halls. We waited near the kitchen table, watching the window fog with warmth. When they cooled, we decorated each one with sprinkles, jelly dots, and too much coloured sugar. Wrapped in paper bags, tied with ribbon, they were gifted to neighbours, mailmen, and Sunday school teachers. Some we hung on the tree. Some never made it past the first evening. They weren't store-bought gifts, but they were wrapped in effort, laughter, and butter. And nothing felt more like Christmas than that. Not every dish was loved. Some were tolerated. At every church supper, PTA potluck, or scout gathering, there was that one bowl of pastel-coloured mix of canned fruit, mini marshmallows, and some ambiguous creamy dressing. We didn't know if it was a salad or a dessert. Adults called it ambrosia. Kids called it that sticky stuff. It had grapes and pineapple and little orange segments, all swimming in a pale pink mixture of sour cream and dreams. Sometimes Grandma would add shredded coconut, and the texture would surprise your tongue. And yet we all took a spoonful, out of respect, out of habit, because Grandma made it. She'd smile as she watched us eat, nodding proudly. And we'd smile back, even if our teeth stuck together from the marshmallows. Looking back, it wasn't about the fruit. It was about tradition, about showing up with something to share. That salad was hospitality on a folding table. And that matters more than taste. After the war, Spam became a quiet staple in American kitchens. Some turned their noses up at it. Others embraced it like an old friend. Ours was the latter. The can sat proudly in the pantry, its key-top lid a bit tricky for small hands. But Mum knew the drill. She'd slice it into thick slabs and lay them on the skillet. The edges curled, crisped, darkened slightly, the scent rising, salty and familiar, enough to make neighbours peek out their windows. We ate it with eggs, sometimes on toast, sometimes with rice. Once, she packed a Spam sandwich in my school lunch. I remember the boy next to me laughing. "That's not what my mom makes," he said. I just shrugged. The next day, he asked for a bite, then another. By Friday, half the lunch table wanted one. Spam didn't pretend to be fancy. It was resourceful, comforting. It was what you made when you didn't have much, but made it matter. And in our kitchen, it always did. There's no bell in the world like the one from an ice cream truck. Ours came every summer afternoon, rolling down the street with a soft jingle that made hearts race and screen doors slam. We'd scramble for coins, nickels, dimes, quarters collected in old mugs or under couch cushions. Then we'd run barefoot, hair wild, joy written all over our sweaty faces. The ultimate prize? 2 chocolate chip cookies sandwiching a thick slab of vanilla ice cream. Cold, sweet, and messy in the best way. You'd take a bite, and the ice cream would push out the sides. The cookie stuck to your teeth. Your hands got sticky. Your shirt? Ruined. But no one cared. That was the sound of summer. That was the taste of freedom. No plans, no homework, just heat and sugar and the squeak of your sneakers on sunlit pavement. Some days, even the sun felt heavy. And on those days, Mum made banana milkshakes. She used ripe bananas, fresh milk, a spoonful of honey, and just enough ice. Into the blender it all went, the machine whirred loud and steady, echoing through the house like a call to gather. Then came the pour-smooth, pale yellow, fragrant and cool. We drank them slowly, not because we wanted to savor every sip, though we did, but because we didn't want it to end. The sweetness clung to your throat. The cold eased the heat off your chest. The banana, gentle and round, carried the hush of someone saying, "You're okay now." I remember once drinking it when I had a fever. Mom placed the glass in front of me and said, "It'll sweeten your voice so you can sing again." And it did. Not just my voice, but my whole world. That milkshake tasted like permission to rest. These foods don't show up on restaurant menus anymore. You won't find cinnamon toast in the dessert section. You won't see Spam sandwiches served on glossy plates. No cafe plays the blender song of a banana shake made with love instead of branding. But those dishes still exist. They live in the worn pages of family cookbooks, in the dusty corners of old kitchens, and most of all in memory. In that soft, flickering space behind your eyes where the radio hums, the skillet sizzles, and Mom stands at the stove with her back turned, humming quietly as she stirs something simple and magical. Because childhood isn't measured in what we had, but in what we felt. It's in the scent of cinnamon and butter, the sound of a spoon against glass, the warmth of something cooked just for you. It's the echo of laughter around a kitchen table, the silence of a snow day, the surprise of a popsicle finally ready. It's in food that didn't cost much, but gave everything. And so, even now, decades later, if I close my eyes, I can taste it all again. The toast, the pudding, the soup, the summer, the kindness that lived in every bite. Not just meals, not just memories. Love made edible.